Good morning, everybody. How are you today? Um, Nice to be learning together again. The class today and the series through the SEA of this morning's class has a beautiful dedication. It's in honor of Ruthie and Joey Towell by their children. They wrote in their dedication in honor of Ruthie and Joey Towell, who continually show us what it means to learn and grow. The children are Sarah and Jack Hedaya, Margot and Moses Hidary, Michael, Shaya, and Marielle Towell. Tizkul Mitzvot. It's a beautiful dedication and a beautiful way to honor your parents, especially since today, Parashat Pinchas, we're going to speak about the way parents are honored in a huge, huge way. We're going to start, just so we have a little bit of an overview, we're going to start in Parashat Pinchas. Actually, we're going to rewind a little bit before it. And from there, we're going to go into the Daughters of Zelophehad. So let's go right away. Open your Humashim to Parashat Pinchas. In the blue books, you would be, Parashat Pinchas actually starts on page 876. But in order to get a proper context for what's going on in Parashat Pinchas, I would like you to just turn back one page and see what took place at the end of last week. So if you'll remember last week in Parashat Balak, the king, Balak, hires Bil'am, a sorcerer, to try and curse the Jewish people, and it is to no avail. Every time he tries to curse them, a blessing comes out, and by the end of the chapter, the Jewish men start to falter. And by the time we get to verse 5, Moshe is telling the heads of his people, of his tribes, to kill anybody who is worshiping Baal Peor, which was the very famous type of idolatry that was done at that time, especially with Midian and Moab. Anyway, verse 6, one of the men, he's just called an Ish here, they don't give us his identity till this week's parasha. He takes a Midianite woman in front of Moshe, in front of everybody, and the reaction to this at the end of verse 6 is Vehema bochim petach ohel moed. I'm giving you this backdrop because I really want to introduce you to who Pinchas was. So at this point, at the end of Parashat Balak, there's a terrible scene where the men from the tribes of Israel are sinning with Baal Peor, which was a very detested idol. It has a lot of references throughout Tanakh, this Baal Peor. So the reaction of the leaders is Hema Bochim. They're crying, they're frozen, they're paralyzed, they're defeated. They don't know, it doesn't seem like there's an act taking place. It's sort of like a surrender when they're crying. And where are they crying? Petach Ohel Moed. They're coming to the tent of Ohel Moed. They're crying to God, so to speak. But then we have in verses 7 and 8, we have coming on the scene, Vayar Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen. It's a very big, beautiful introduction. And when somebody has all these introductions to their name, it lends to the accolades of who they were. This Pinchas is the son of the famous Elazar, who's the son of Aharon HaKohen. And just so you follow what's taking place here, besides the actions, I want you to notice what's called the rikuz pe'alim, the abundance of verbs that take place one after the next. Vayad, vayakom, vayikach, vayavo, vayikod. There's vayidkod. You're going to see a lot of verses, one falling on top of the next. There's a ton of action taking place here. It seems on the one side that Bnei Israel's reaction is they're crying and they're beaten down and they're just defeated from this situation, but not Pinchas. And he's the one who is going to vayakom. Whenever you see a word like vayakom, he's going to arise. Bamakom she'en anashim, in a place where there are no men, then you get up, you be a man. Vayakom, stand up, take a stand, might be a better way to describe vayakom. And vayakom mitoch ha'edah, that means that there were a lot of people there that could have done this. He was in the midst of an edah. An edah, we keep saying, is a group of witnesses, a group of people who have witnessed God's greatness, have witnessed God's miracles. These are all, and this is here, it's written this way to let us know any one of us could be a Pinchas, so to speak. And we're going to talk about what it takes to be that person and what God bestows upon people who act in this way. So very often the word that's used regarding Pinchas's zealotry. He was very zealous. I'd like to use a few additional words to describe Pinchas, his actions. I didn't even tell you what he did yet, so let me tell you what he does. So he arises, mitoch ha'edah, vayikach romach beyado, and he takes in his hand a spear. Vayavo, another verb. He comes after the Israelite man, El Hakuba. He either goes where the Israelite is in the tent. The kuba could be that, like a cube, like a tent. Vayidkor et shenehem, and he literally pierces them. When they teach this to the kids, they use the terminology of a shish kebab, because he literally takes his spear and he spears through both of them, through the man and through the woman simultaneously with one spear. It's a little graphic, but for today's purposes, Vate'atzar hamagefa, there had been a plague that broke out because the men were sinning with Baal Peor. Not only were they sinning, part of the way that the rituals unfolded when they would worship this Baal Peor. The word Baal means like the husband. It was like a mother nature, father nature type of ritual where they would spill seed on the ground and that would impregnate the earth. It was a very, very, sexual type of practice with Baal Peor that was very, very detested, one of the most detested. And so part of these rituals and these practices involved these types of immoral acts. And what Pinchas does is, when the man and woman are literally together, he pierces them, and that stops this plague. And at the end, it says that 24,000 people had died from the plague. That means, again, for every second that he would have hesitated, who knows how many more people would have died. But the purpose of bringing you back to this story is to tell you that this Pinchas, who's now going to have a parasha named after him, this week's parasha, where God is going to give him the highest praise, tremendous, tremendous blessing. We don't see this so often, so we should be very, very warmed and excited when we see these words. But more than that, we should say, what did he do that got Hashem so happy? What is it? What actions bring about blessing from God is maybe a better way to phrase it. And now we can start. If you're in your Blue Humashim, it's page 876. It's chapter 25 in the book of Bimidbar. We start on verse 10. Hashem speaks to Moshe and he says, Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aharon HaKohen, and it starts to give us the sense that we already know who he is. They just told us a second ago who his father and grandfather were. But it's telling us that when a child or a grandchild performs such a beautiful act, he doesn't just bring glory to himself, he brings glory to his predecessors, to his father, to his grandfather. It shows that the education that they gave him, that the values that they instilled have now come to fruition. And God uses these words, Heshiv et chamati. He brought back, he calmed down my chama. Cham is my heat, my fury, my anger, me'al b'nei Israel, from Bnei Israel. He sort of pressed the rewind button so that the anger that was flowing outwards of me has now sort of been retracted. Bekan'o et kinati. These are very, very strong words. Kan'o et kinati. He avenged my vengeance, maybe. I don't even know what the English would say here. Yeah, it uses the word vengeance, but the word kin'ah is sort of a jealousy when there's been some type of infidelity. And that's what worshiping idols is. It's an infidelity. It's not being true and loyal to God. And these are all going to set the foundation for what Pinchas is going to represent. And it says, Betocham. Where did he go? Look, he was privileged. He was the son or the grandson of the Kohen Gadol. He's Moshe's nephew. He's a guy. He's an important person. But it says betocham. It's an important lesson even for any leadership. Of course, it's going to be speaking about the Kohanim, but in any leadership role or position, you cannot lead from sitting on high on your perch. You need to come in and be amongst the people, and within the people, you can sense what's going on and you can act quickly when you make yourselves of the people. So betocham is one of the things that he's being lauded for. Velo kiliti et bnei Israel bekinati. It goes as far as to say, Hashem is saying, had my anger gone unchecked, had it not been tempered by Pinchas, all of Bnei Israel would be gone. There would not be a single person left standing. This is a very serious situation. And so what happens is, lachen, this is maybe one of the most beautiful Pesukim. I know I say this about a lot of the Pesukim, but this is really, really beautiful. It's verse 12 in chapter 25, Bemidbar. Lachen, remember that word, chen, ken. For the sake of ken, for the sake of good, for the sake of the proper, for the sake of restoring things in their rightful place. That's ken. We're going to talk much more about that word in a little while. Emor, Moshe, say this. Remember the words emor el hakohanim ve'amarta. The word emor means what I'm about to say is immutable. It's unchangeable. It is a statute that will stand, and it's going to confirm itself. It says, Emor, hineni noten lo. I am giving to him. My friend Paula taught me that the word natan is a palindrome. It could be read both ways. So hineni noten lo, I am giving to him, and we understand that what God is giving to him is actually a reflection of what Pinchas gave to God. We start to get this understanding of the relationship between man and God being a reciprocal relationship. Whatever you put in, that's what you take out. It's not a one-way street. The relationship with God is a two-way street. And so I am going because he extended himself. Look, if we stopped for a minute and said, what did Pinchas do? He took a spear, and we're going to see now, he killed the head of the tribe of Shimon. This is a major story. Let's read a little more first. So I'm going to give him Beriti Shalom. If you don't faint for this, then I don't know what you're going to faint for. There's blood everywhere. There are tens of thousands of people that just died. But at this point, God is declaring his Berit of Shalom, his covenant of peace. This scene, if there were reporters, you wouldn't be able to take pictures because it would be so gory. But yet here is where God establishes his covenant of peace. And we're going to have to redefine what peace means. Peace isn't just a set of the violins playing and everybody living happily together. There's going to be way more to peace, but I'm going to discuss it in a minute as soon as we take a few more pesukim. Vehaitalo. And from now on, since I took you backwards and I told you his father was Elazar and his grandfather was Aharon, I just want you to know this about Pinchas. We're not just moving backwards, we're going to move into the future as well. Pinchas is going to stand literally on the bridge between the past and the future, and the name of the bridge is going to be the Peace Bridge. And we're going to see, it says he's going, for him and his children after him, these are strong words, Brit Kehunat Olam, eternal, for eternity, forever. The covenant of the Kehuna is going to be in his family line, Tachat Asher, because Kineh leElohav. We still have to talk about what that means, actually. What does it mean that he was jealous for his God, so to speak? And in doing so, Vaychaper al Bnei Israel. In doing so, he was able to bring kapara to Bnei Yisrael. We'll take two more pesukim and then we'll talk about it. Veshem Ish Yisrael. Originally, they didn't tell us who it was, but they tell us now that the man from Yisrael that was smitten together with the Midianite was Zimri ben Salu. He was the prince for the tribe of Shimon. And you know who the lady was? The name of the lady was Kozbi Batsur. She was the princess, Rosh Umot, the head of all the people in Midian. So two major high-profile political leaders, one from the Jewish people and one from Midian, were both killed together. And what God has to say is that not only was it an appropriate act that Pinchas did in killing them, if we learned this in depth, we would see that Pinchas could have been in hot water. There wasn't a trial done. Moshe was in the presence of this, and maybe he should have asked. There are a lot of debates that go on whether or not Pinchas acted properly, and I think those debates are there to tell us, don't pull a Pinchas so quickly, or don't act impetuously, or don't just be quick to act and blame it or use Pinchas as the model for it. So we're going to be very clear that what Pinchas did, the Torah is telling us there was a plague taking place, and the people that he would have asked were Hema Bochim Petach Ha'ol Moed. They were too busy crying, and something needed to be done. And so God is saying here that what he did is going to give him this Brit Kehunat Olam. He's going to get this covenant that forever, the Kehuna. Now, why? What does the Kehuna represent? And what does the idea mean that it's going to be his for all eternity? So we have to stop for a minute and say, what would we ascribe? What type of personality trait would we ascribe? Originally, we might say that Pinchas was a person of courage. He has, I should say before I say courage, maybe he's showing confidence. What does confidence mean? He moves swiftly. He knows his plan. He is Vayar, Vayakom, Vayikach, Vayavo, Vayidkod. He is doing everything. When he does number one, he already knows what he's going to do number two. He's not flying by the seat of his pants, he has a plan, and he's executing it one step after the next to precision. He's going to see, he's going to get up, he's going to chase them, and he's going to pierce them. And there's a tremendous confidence, the word confidence, kon, with fidence, like fidier, like fiduciary, like fidelity, like the word, it means trust. It's a Latin word for trust. So he does this with an amount of trust. And God's saying he trusted in himself. And to trust in yourself means to know your abilities and then to operate based on those abilities. Like, I am confident that I could run 7 miles because I've already done it. So I'm basing it on my known strengths. And so all of a sudden, the word confidence doesn't really pertain to Pinchas. The verbs would have us feel that he's operating with confidence, but the reality is, in order to be confident in something, it has to be something that you already have done or that you know or that you've practiced. And so confidence is limited only to what you know, only to what you've experienced. So Pinchas falls into another category. And I love this category because we're going to see it a second time in this parasha. And I think Pinchas would fall into the world of courage. Courage is a certain type of gevurah. They use the word gevurah in the Talmud a lot to describe the daughters of Zelophehad, for instance. But I think he's going to set the tone for what gevurah is. So gevurah would be courage. And to define courage, it means that you're operating in the unknown. If you were operating within the known, then you would be confident. But you need something more because you're going into a scenario not necessarily knowing the outcome. Not only does he have courage for himself, but he has courage because Moshe himself has no frame of reference here. Nobody has a frame of reference for this scenario. So courage is not about what you know. Courage is about the instincts that you have, the intuition that you have. It's not something that is taught. It's something that's inside of you. It's inspired. Courage is something that you're inspired with. And so what's so beautiful about what Pinchas did, because you can teach a lot of things and then you'd make people confident, but you can't teach courage. Courage comes from within. And that's where God is starting to say, if it comes from within, it comes from a place and it comes from a space that isn't the brain, it's really more the heart. If the brain is about the knowledge, then the heart has the instinct, has that intuition. And what is inside that? What is it that the Kohanim, why does he get, of all the gifts, the Kehunat Olam, the job of the Kohen, the purpose? It also defines the role of the Kohen. The role of the Kohen is to inspire people. The role of the Kohen is to motivate, to stimulate, to stir people, to move people. And we're moving people, we're uplifting people to do what? To actually tap into themselves, to actually become shalem. This word biriti shalom, we said, what does that mean? What does the covenant of peace even mean that Pinchas is being given? He's giving a covenant that it's his job. Yes, it was their job to create peace, ben adam lechavero. That was one of the big Aharon HaKohen, Ohev Shalom and Rodef Shalom. That was his job, to constantly create and make sure that peace is manifest throughout the land. But in order for there to be peace between man and man, first and foremost, there has to be an inner peace that a person has with themselves. And this inner peace, this shelemut, this idea of having, I'm using the English word courage, or we started with confidence, I'm saying that the brain and the heart must work together. And in order for them to work together, there has to be this shelemut, the physical side and the spiritual side of a human being have to be working together in tandem. The idea of shelemut can only happen, and God is saying this, when you understand that inside of you there is this godliness, this naton, this titan, this idea of there is a reciprocity between your spiritual side that is sort of acting out its godliness, and between God coming and infusing us with his godliness. And courage breeds courage. What does that mean? It means that the more you practice this, the better you get at it. The more you push the envelope, the more you try new things, now you just push the finish line a little further, and now it's 8 miles or 9 miles or whatever it is that your goals are. But God is saying, what gives man courage? The knowledge that he has within him this special godliness. That's what makes us whole. And having this knowledge and inspiring others, that was the Mamlechet Kohanim, that Or LaGoyim, that we were going to be the light unto the Jewish nation, and God willing, we will be once again. The idea that we inspire other people is that we understand the light we have and we let it shine. We shine it to ourselves first. We shine it to others. This is basically the story of Pinchas. And this explains to us why it's eternal. Why does it have to be Berit Kehunat Olam? Because forever, as long as God is in this world, there is this eternal light that's inside of humanity that needs to be uplifted, that needs to incorporate itself with the physical component. And so that's the job of the Kohanim. The job of the Kohanim is to inspire us, and who could possibly be more inspirational than Pinchas himself? That's how we start our parasha. Moving forward, I'd like to go to chapter 27, the first verse. This is one of my, I keep saying it, but it really is one of my favorite chapters in all of Torah. It's beyond beautiful. I'll give you a little bit of a cliff notes on it. There are these 5 daughters, and they want to get a portion in the land since they have no brothers. Their father had no sons. They feel that they are going to be marginalized. And they come and they say to Moshe, why should our father's name be forgotten? Why should our father not be amongst his brothers? We need to have a portion in the land. And God comes and answers them beautifully. That's just the basic cliff notes. But the truth is, before you go into chapter 26, it really behooves us to even go just turn back one page in chapter 26, verse 59, for instance. We start to notice the winds of change upon us. What does that mean? We start to notice that usually, if we paid attention, but for the sake of time we didn't, there are very few women that are mentioned in the census that takes place after the Pinchas story. That was the part that I skimmed over, but maybe I should just take you back for a minute and tell you it starts with the daughter of Asher. Her name was Serach bat Asher, and she is now included in this count in the census, which is unusual because up until now, the census counted the men mi ben esrim vamala, from 20 years and over. But once we get now to chapter 26, verse 59, we see something unusual starting to take place. The name of Amram's wife was Yocheved, the daughter of Levi, who was born to Levi in Egypt. And she bore to Amram Aharon, Moshe, and their sister Miriam. And so all of a sudden now we have courageous women who are named and counted. Why do I say courageous women? Because we know that Yocheved was very courageous in giving birth to a child and not following the laws of the king of drowning the child, so to speak. She instead puts him on the river instead of putting him in the river. Maybe she could get away on a technicality. And Some people even say that Yocheved was one of the midwives that helped the Jewish women give birth and didn't kill them when they were boys. Miriam, we know about her. She was a trendsetter in her day, and I'm bringing up these women, and she watches over Moshe, and she sings the song, and she tells the women to bring their musical instruments, because by golly, there will be singing and dancing, and all of these ideas that come to our mind, all of these memories, when we start to hear about Yocheved and Miriam, right before they introduce us to the daughters of Zelophehad, say, courageous women, the movement of the women standing up and voicing, using their voice to bring about proper and positive change or legal enactments, that is still alive and well. And so we already had the seeds planted with Yocheved, Miriam, even Serach. Those women are mentioned, and now come these daughters of Zelophehad. Now, of course, they're coming here and now, just so you know, their timing is impeccable, because when they were taking the census would dictate which families get what amount or what portion of land within their tribal allotments. So if you have a person like Zelophehad who doesn't have any sons, then there's nothing on the docket saying that they are going to inherit a certain portion, because he only has daughters. So we have, let's start from the beginning, it's very beautiful. We have Vatikravna benot Zelophehad. The daughters of Zelophehad come close, they approach. We're going to talk about what that means in a minute. And this, I should just tell you from now, the word Vatikravna only appears twice in all of Tanakh, and both times that it appears, it speaks of the daughters of Zelophehad. That means that these women were the first ones to have the guts or the gumption to come and actually approach. Again, we're talking ancient times. This was a time where women standing before not just Moshe and Aharon, but an entire assembly. That a couple of pages ago we had Sarah Ba'ohel. You know, this was definitely something that was very, very courageous on their part. So Vatikravna benot Zelophehad, the daughters of Zelophehad. Now, if you thought that Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon was impressive, wait till you hear who these women are. They are the daughters of Zelophehad, who was the son of Chephed, who was the son of Gilad, who was the son of Machir, who was the son of Menashe, to the family of Menashe, who was the son of Yosef. And if that's not impressive enough for you, it goes on and names the daughters. Ele Shemot Benotav, and these are the names of their daughters. You have Machla, Noah, Chagla, Milka, and Tirza. There are many opinions of what their names represent, but for today we have too much to cover, so I'm going to tell you first and foremost what stands out most to me is that if Pinchas is encompassing 3 generations, his father and his grandfather, well, how impressive that the daughters of Zelophehad actually are named as the 7th generation. So for those of you who know me, you know I'm very sensitive about this 7-generation concept. I believe very strongly that the 7th generation is able to do a kapara, a direct kapara for the 1st generation. So the 7th generation, I'll just do it for you. If Yosef is the 1st and Menashe is the 2nd, Machir, Gilad, Chephed, Zelophehad, and the Benot, the daughters. What is it that is so important that the Torah had to go about? Look, if you wanted to make legislation that women inherit, there were a lot of ways for the Torah to record that. But instead, they went on to give us the generations that came before them. They name all the daughters, and I'll just give you one more pasuk and then we'll go back. And they use this word, vata'amodna. There's only one other place in Torah that has vata'amodna. You're going to be surprised. If you don't already know it, it will surprise you. It surprised me, at least, when I researched it, but I'll share it anyway in a minute. They stand in front of Moshe and in front of Elazar HaKohen and in front of the Nesi'im and in front of the entire congregation. And they stand, I want to say in front of God, because it says Petach Ohel Moed. They stand at the entrance of the tent of meeting. These women have nothing to hide. They are not rabble-rousers. They are not grassroots movement that they're plucking along anybody that they can along the way so that they could come and become a mob scene. This is not who they are. They stand, and the words vata'amodna, so maybe we should take them. I don't know where to go. So many things to tell you. All right, first, let's start, before we do anything, let's start with the idea of who the women are. Let's go back to their lineage. And it goes specifically to say Ben Menashe, the son of Yosef. We hear Menashe, and right away, if you're in the blue books, I'd like you to turn to page 230. I'll give you a verse in a second. And that would be chapter 41, verse 51. Vayikra Yosef et Shem HaBechor. Yosef is in Egypt. He has his elder son, his first son, and he names the son Menashe. And the purpose that he gives for the name Menashe is Ki nashani Elohim et kol amali ve'et kol bet avi. Why is he named Menashe? Menashe is because Yosef is looking to forget his father. He is looking to forget all bet avi, all the pain and all the suffering that went along with being in my father's house. And if we had the time, we would really sink our teeth into what Yosef, the traumas that Yosef underwent from being thrown in a pit to being one thing after the next. So what Yosef is doing when he names his child Menashe, his intent is to eradicate the memory of his father. And so I'm hoping that some of you are smiling right now. Because if the daughters of Zelophehad are intended to make a tikkun for Yosef, to rectify, to correct something that was done 7 generations ago, the 7th rectifies for the first, the 7th generation, these daughters of Zelophehad are saying, we are here to make sure that our father is not forgotten. We're from the tribe of Menashe, which means forget your father, but we're here to change that. We're here to change that so much that the Torah is here to give everybody a name, because our new names are not going to be an identity that we had in the past, that Yosef had in the past, where he thought not only it was okay to forget his past. We're going back to our past of 7 generations. We don't want to forget our past. But more importantly, we don't want to forget our father. We want to make sure that his name lives on forever. And so when we start to see the name Menashe, that should evoke certain things for us. When I told you the word ta'amodna, a very unusual place, I was actually a little excited to find it. Vata'amodna, the only other place it appears in the Torah, in the blue books, it's page 222. And whoever is working off another Chumash, it's in Bereshit, chapter 41, verse 3. I'm sure you didn't expect to come here. Vata'amodna. When we learn Torah, we want to say, if these women were vata'amodna, if these women were all standing together as a group, why would the Torah use this particular language here? It might want us to cross-reference other places where it was used. But when it only appears in Torah in this one other place, we have to say, what's going on here? Vehine, I dropped a pin in Parashat Miketz in the 3rd verse. Vehine, and behold, 7 other cows came up after them from the Ye'od, from the river. What am I talking about? I'm dropping pins and then I talk a little bit and I make a little small talk. I'm making small talk because I want you to start from verse 1 yourselves. Learn Torah, learn to scan. The teacher drops a pin and you right away say, let me get a context for what's taking place in the content. So all this small talk was so that you could go and say, oh yeah, I know this is Paro's dream. And after 2 years, he had a dream, and the dream that he had were 7 fat cows came up from the river. And now verse 3, what happens? The 7 other cows, they came up after them from the river. They were scrawny and not so good looking. They were thin, and they stood next to the gorgeous, beautiful, fat cows. And the skinny cows ate the fat cows. We know that story. Why am I bringing you into Paro's dream? In the middle of the Daughters of Zelophehad, the Torah wants to tell us what their appearance may have been before they began to state their case. Vata'amodna. You could picture them, picture in your mind the scene. These 5 skinny women, I'm calling them skinny because just to make the point here. But compared to who? Who are they standing up against? They're standing up against a majority. They're standing against the robust, the men, the leadership, Moshe, Elazar. They're standing before the Eidah, and they must have appeared. And why is it so? This is the parts of it that I love. Why is that so great? That the Torah would describe them like the skinny cows. Because never underestimate the skinny cows. Never underestimate the way that these women are standing up, and what must have been going on in the minds of the people at that point is, who are these ladies and why are they here, and what shot do they even think that they have to even make a case for themselves? They don't have any legal backing. What? And all of a sudden, Vata'amodna, we see now me and you see Vata'amodna, and we already know they're not just going to be successful. They're going to swallow the fat cows. They're going to eat them for breakfast, so to speak. These skinny women definitely have something to offer. And I'm just going to add one piece, because when we had learned about the 7 fat cows and the 7 skinny cows, the reason that Yosef was so able to interpret the dream was because maybe what he saw through Paro's dream, he's the only one who could see this, was he saw himself. Originally, he was one of those skinny cows, and he swallowed up the 7 fat cows. What does that mean? He and his brothers were the skinny ones. They were the sons of the Shefachot. The 7 fat cows were the sons of Leah and the sons of the sons of Leah, which were the 6 sons of Leah. You're wondering where's the 7th, so we'll put Dinah in that pile to say those were the 7 children from the Dinah side. And then everybody else on the other side. And how are we going to get 7 if we swap Yosef and we put Ephraim and Menashe, just for the sake of the imagery? But the idea that Yosef now recognizes that when he was telling his dreams to his brothers, they were possibly seeing themselves as being swallowed up alive. Who are these skinny cows to be ruling over us? Pieces to the puzzle start to make sense to Yosef. And when these daughters of Zelophehad are standing in front of Moshe and in front of Elazar and in front of the Eidah, they're standing with the same conviction or anticipation that either Yosef had when he had his dreams that he was going to be king, or with the same anticipation of those skinny cows that they were going to be the ones not swallowed by the fat, but they were the ones who were going to consume. And Again, it's not about consumption. It's about survival. There's 7 cows and 7 cows, and they're coming and they're saying our existence, our survival depends on this situation. And so we go back to their story, and they say some beautiful words. They say, Avinu met bamidbar. Our father died in the desert, but he was not amongst the people who had protested against God with the Korach situation. He died of a separate sin, and he didn't have any sons. And then they use these words. Lama yigara shem avinu mitoch mishpachto. Why should our father's name be obliterated or be omitted from his family because he doesn't have a son? Give us tena lanu achuzah. Give us an achuzah. We're going to talk about all these words amongst our father's brothers. What are they asking? This is the meat and potatoes of their request. The first thing they ask is lama. The word lama, maybe I should take a minute here and say, up until now, every time somebody had something to say in the desert, it's been a complaint. Why do we have to have this horrible lechem akel okel, this horrible man? We're sick and tired of it. Why don't we have water? Why did you bring us to Egypt, to Mitzrayim? Why don't you leave us in Egypt to die there? There's better burial grounds there. Why? Any time there was any kind of expression in Bimidbar, it was usually a negative expression. It was usually one where the question didn't really even have a solution. What's so beautiful about the Daughters of Zelophehad is they don't just present the problem. This is, by the way, we're learning about the Daughters of Zelophehad and how they present themselves, because ultimately it's how we want to learn, not just for a law class how to place an argument, but really how to conduct yourself and how to get where you want to get in life and how to stake your claim and how to ask for what you want. There's whining, and then there's a request. And then there's the best, which is, I have a problem and I have a solution to the problem. You know, you're much better off when you call with a problem. If you give the person the solution on a silver platter, you actually have a shot rather than expect them to read your mind what would make you happy. And so here, what do they say? First, they say lama. They open up the world of question. We're going to question this. There's a question here. Lama, and maybe why yes and why no. But there's a discussion to be had. And then they use the word lama yigara. Why should he be marginalized? The word yigara, a lot of commentaries have written about it, also appears with Pesach Sheni, where the people come and tell Moshe, why should we be left out? Why should we be marginalized? If we are tameh lamet, if we are impure, why should everybody else be able to partake in the festivities and we have to be sidelined? And you should know that with that question, God does make new legislation, but he doesn't address the people that brought the complaint directly to them. You'll see God's going to speak directly and address the daughters directly. So hold on for that. But they say, Lama yigara shem avinu. Why should our father's name be lost? The name is a very important component to a person's existence. And then it says, they say, ki en lo ben, just because he doesn't have a son, tena lanu achuzah. They ask specifically for an achuzah amongst our father's brothers. Let's think a minute what they're saying. They're saying a mouthful. They're not, on the surface it says, give us a parcel of land so that he could be neighbors with his brothers. That's fantastic. But we hear Ache Avinu. We just hear the word Achim. We start to think, who's their Avinu? Let's say their Avinu is Yosef, because again, the seventh and the first, and Yosef is mentioned here. So we're really brothers, and of course this would be a beautiful kapara because Yosef and his brothers never were able to have, until his dying day, they didn't have that sense of brotherhood and of peace. At the end, they even thought that he wanted to kill them. But I want you to see why they use the word achuzah. I think these women are geniuses. It's page 264. It's chapter 47 in Bereshit. And I am in verse 11. What's so fantastic about the fact that they give a solution? The solution isn't just to ensure the future, it's to make a clear record of the past. Meaning, in verse 11, Yosef settles his father and his brothers, and he gives them an achuzah. What are these daughters saying? Great grandpa Yosef gave his brothers an achuzah. The achuzah was in Egypt. You think it was that easy to secure land and give it to them in Eretz Mitzrayim? And he didn't just give them any land. He gave them b'metav haaretz, the best land, be'eretz Ramses. Ka'asher tziva paro. What did Yosef do? And not just that, I'm going to add one more pasuk. Vayichalchel Yosef et aviv. He didn't just give them land. He gave them food when it was a scarcity. And he gave them food to his brothers and the whole household of his father. Lechem lefi hataf. He even fed to the smallest, youngest. Velechem en. And don't forget, there was no bread at that time. Ve'eretz Kenaan mipnei hara'av. It was a time of famine. So let me just remind you, and again, the women aren't saying this. They're just hinting this, or maybe I'm suggesting that this is what they're hinting. They ask for an achuzah amongst their father's brothers because their father gave his brothers an achuzah. So it's only fair that this be regarded as a reason or as a precedent for, and were they deserving of it? They weren't deserving of it. They tried to kill him. They sold him. He ended up there because they put a bag over his head and tied it and dumped him on a wagon. So they asking for this achuzah, for this portion. And I want you to see God's response. It's very beautiful. So, Vayakrev Moshe et Mishpatan, in verse 5, God brings their mishpat in front of God. Moshe, brings their mishpat in front of God. Verse 7, Hashem says to Moshe, I want you to say this. And if you're one of those people like me who's a stickler, you'll notice it says, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe lemor. It doesn't say Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Vayomer and lemor. This amira, this emor el hakohanim, this is when you see a double emor, it means that it is going to keep on reverberating. And it's immutable and it's unchangeable throughout the generations. And then he says the nicest thing. He says, Ken benot Zelophehad dovrot. Ken, the women, the daughters of Zelophehad, are speaking ken. We have to really quantify what does that word ken mean. We'll do it in a minute. The next thing he says is, Naton titen lahem, give them not just an achuzah like they asked for, give them an achuzat nachala. And a nachala, we always say from the word brook, it's like a stream of water that runs like downhill, it flows. So when you are going to get land from father to son, it just flows the way water would flow in a river. So their achuzah should flow to them. This should not be something in future generations that should be difficult. And give it to them betoch ache avihim. Make sure that they are in the center of their patriarchal family, their father's brothers. And then it uses another word, ve'ha'avarta et nachalat avihen lahem. I'm going to have to talk about all these words about how the land is going to come to them. In the case that we don't have time when we wrap up, just so we know, the rest of this Parshiah is going to discuss the line of inheritance, meaning if a man dies and he doesn't have a son, then his daughter gets it. And if he doesn't have a daughter, then his brothers get it. And if he doesn't have any brothers, then his uncles get it. And if there are no uncles, then you're going to give it to the closest one in his family. And this is going to be a chukah, a chok, mishpat, that Hashem had commanded to Moshe. So just so we have that as our understanding, it's these women who bring this justice to light. And they don't just bring it to light. God uses words like naton titen. Naton titen only appears twice. And the other place it appears, it had just appeared a minute ago. It's page 848. I will give you a verse right now. In Bamidbar, chapter 21, verse 2. Yisrael, Vayidor Yisrael neder, the Jewish people make a vow to God, and they say, Im naton titen et ha'am hazeh. They were about to fight the Kanaani, which most people believe that Kanaani was really the Amalekim. And if you will help us be successful, Im naton titen et ha'am hazeh, God, if you will give us this nation, then we will consecrate their land. And Hashem listens, and he gives the land to them. And the name of the city is called Chormah. Why are we using the word naton titen, which are words that were used by soldiers who wanted to be victorious in their military endeavor? Why would we use that same word? Why would God use the words naton titen lahem? God is making a very, very clear case. And he's saying, these women and their attitude, that's going to be what's going to naton titen. That's what's going to not just rid you of your enemies, that's what's going to bring God into making you victorious, not against only your enemies, but with anything you do. This naton titen, to be compared to that one, is God saying, you think that you have to go through all of these avenues in order to bring me into your world. These women, they stood humbly, I'm going to say like 7 skinny cows. They stood humbly before me, and that's what brings salvation. It doesn't always have to be with all the fireworks, the bells, the whistles. And I want to talk about this word ken, because I think I'm going to end with this word ken. I think it's one of the most beautiful words that we have in their story. First of all, the word ken, vayhiken, when God created the world, anything he said, he created, he asked for it to become vayhiken, and it was so, it was just. It came to being. It was in its proper place. It was as God had intended. So when they say ken benot Zelophehad dobrot, God is saying it's what I always intended. It was my original intent. The way I originally intended to create the world, I originally intended for these women to be able to stake their claim. But I think something very, very piercing happens when we start to remember the Menashe, the Yosef, because we can't leave them out in the cold. It's part of the story. So if you go to page 272, that would be in Bereshit, chapter 48, verse 18. We'll see something very interesting, and maybe we'll start to wrap it up with this idea. When Yaakov wanted Yosef to bring his sons to be blessed, he brought both Menashe, who was the eldest, and Ephraim, who was the younger one. And so we know the story, he placed Menashe right in front of Yaakov's right hand so that God would put his right hand on Menashe and his left hand on Ephraim, but when it came time to bless them, Yaakov switched his hands and he put his right hand on Ephraim, giving Ephraim the greater honor than Menashe, who ended up getting the left hand. And Yosef says this comment, Vayomer Yosef el Aviv, Lo ken avi. Daddy, that's not ken. That is not proper. This one is the older one. Ki zeh habechor, sim yemincha al rosho. Put your hand on his head. And what happens is, the background to this story and the commentaries give a tremendous accolades to Menashe. Menashe didn't fight the fact that the grandpa was giving the grandson Ephraim, or marginalizing Menashe for the sake of Ephraim. He resisted the Loken. Menashe gets merit, and what God is saying here when he tells Ken Dobrot Benot Zelophehad, they deserve, as the children of Menashe, who was already shafted and didn't say a single word, they deserve to get their due. And I'll leave it, since we're in this area, with one last reference in chapter 50, page 286, verse 12, when it came time, and I think this is a very beautiful, what goes around comes around, and the daughters have to remind us of it, because they're telling us, and the Torah is telling us, that these are the children, the great-granddaughters of Yosef. When it comes time to bury Yaakov, you'll see in verse 12, Vaya'asu banav lo ken ka'asher tzivam. We're saving time, but he had taken them, and he had, Yosef had headed up the entire group that was going to go and have the father buried. Vaya'asu lo ken ka'asher tziva. What it means by ken is the father deserves burial rights. The way Yosef gave certain burial rights for his father, we want to give those burial rights for our father. The burial rights means that when he dies, his name stays alive. And just to wrap it up, because I see the time is up, I'll just end it with three very beautiful words that come to mind when I think of the daughters of Zelophehad. And these are words that we want to take with ourselves, and we should be successful in our missions and stating our claims and being blessed by God for it. We need to take initiative. We need to have faith in ourselves. We need to have that inspiration, that courage to bring our thoughts, our ideas before people who sometimes are in a higher position than us. And courage breeds courage. And that is what is most admired by God, is going out there and really finding the proper way, combining what's in our heart together with what's in our minds, our intellect and our spirit, bringing it together, just like Pinchas did, just like the daughters of Zelophehad did, and being blessed by Hashem, the words of Hashem. That's actually, I'll end with this, the book of Bimidbar ends recording the daughters of Zelophehad and how they had to marry within their tribe so that the land would still be tribal land for eternity. And I believe they could have just told us that here, that they had to marry within their tribe. But I think that the Torah saved it. They saved the best for last. They closed the book of Bimidbar, Bimidaber, a book where there was so much talk about so many negative things. The Torah saved this for dessert. It said, I'm not letting my sefer end on all the talks that were had, that were destructive, that were counterproductive. We're going to end it with the talking of these women. I think it's a very big part of the story. We start in Shemot with women. We end the Bimidbar story with the women. Never underestimate the power of the 7 skinny cows. Have a great day, everybody. I love you, and thank you for joining us today. I'm going to just see if there was any questions. Please address the fact that post this nachala to the daughters that the laws of inheritance there's only men mentioned. Yes, men are mentioned, but where there are no men, the women, it's what comes, the question must have been asked earlier, women are able. There is a recording of the shi'ur. I will type my number here, 718-938-8860. And I am putting my number here, and you can feel either comfortable to contact the SEA, myself, or Jessica. Did I press enter? There it is. My number is right there, 718-938-8860. Feel free to contact me directly, or anybody else that you, however you found out about this. Anyway, oh, Malka, welcome back. I see you. We're both on the same side of the ocean. Welcome, welcome. Anyway, nice seeing everybody. Let me click this so I can see everybody's face. Oh, I see everybody's faces. Hi. Everybody have a great day. Enjoy.